3 months ago, I released a short farming game called Seedrun, where you grow different helper plants that can aid you with your farming tasks like chopping trees and rocks, watering other plants, harvesting them, and so on. The game received mostly positive reviews, and the majority of people had a great time, but a few players had some complaints about the lack of automation in the game. Ultimately, they expected the game to be something that it was not. Which is okay, I think. A game can't be for everyone. Other people even liked that the game was not trying to be an automation game, which kinda proves my point. Anyways, let's have a look at the numbers. Seedrun had about 900 wishlists on release and sold most copies in the first week. After that it slowly died and there haven't been any spikes since. Right now the game has sold about 300 units and 12% of players refunded it, which is average. So as you can see, the game was a financial flop. But I've learned a lot while making it, and I'm really proud of it and releasing a game on Steam in general. Of course I was wishing for more players and I was really hoping for content creators to cover the game, which sadly didn't happen at all. But let's not look to the past. Here's my new master plan. I think a big problem with Seedrun was the lack of wishlists and that I released it too soon after the Steam Next Fest. This time I want the game to be sitting there, slowly collecting wishlists before I release it. I browsed through upcoming Steam fests and stumbled upon the Tower Defense Fest, which seemed perfect. This could be a great starting point for collecting wishlists. And I had about 12 weeks to finish the demo for my game. After attending with the demo, I could improve upon the game and keep developing until another Next Fest was around to gain even more coverage. I also want to target a different audience now. With Seedrun I targeted casual players and made a fairly simple game. This time I want to target the main Steam audience, especially gamers who like to strategize and min-max. I came up with Pew Pew Pirates. Pew Pew Pirates is a tower defense game in which you can react to events and enemy attacks by moving cannons and using abilities. Pirates are after your treasure, so you have to defend it. The main mechanic is the rearranging of your towers. You can just pick them up and put them somewhere else. This mechanic would be pretty uninteresting if you always saw where and how many enemies would spawn. That's why I randomized it. You'll never know exactly where the next enemy may spawn, which keeps you on your toes. It's not a game in which you put down your defenses and watch what happens. You rather have to be vigilant and adjust your tower placements. To make this even more interesting, events may happen which can buff enemies or debuff your towers in random locations. For example, a speed event could spawn on an enemy lane, so you quickly have to move your best tower to counterattack. Or a tower range debuff spawns somewhere, so you could use your stun ability or slow ability to hold enemy movement until the debuff disappears again. What you're seeing now took about 3 months of development. I'll walk you through my process. I started with a very boring prototype. It was just a small test for the moving system. I wanted to see how it would feel to move blocks around and also slot them on bases or on top of each other. I added a stats system so each block could have their own specific values. I even made it so you could build your own towers by stacking different stat blocks on top of each other. If you had a power block and range block, you could combine them to build a strong tower, and when you need more range somewhere else, you could just take that block and put it on another tower. To see this in action, I added enemies and a simple path which they slowly follow. When enemies reach the end of the path, they damage the nexus and die. If too many enemies damage the nexus, it's game over. I gave the towers a simple attack, which shoots a ball at the nearest enemy. The tower range, the power of the ball and how often they're shot depends on what stat blocks the tower has. This was looking quite promising, and playtesting was already a lot of fun even though it was visually boring. Which brought me to the visuals aspect. I decided for a pirates theme because I thought it was fitting for a tower defense game, and I could easily think of many different enemy or tower types. This immediately gave me the idea to make the game look like a treasure map. It makes a lot of sense if you think about it. I was already seeing the Indiana Jones travel animations in my head. A perfect way to visualize the enemy movement. Usually I draw pixel art for my games, but I wanted to test something different and tried a scribbled look which looked like this. I believe you could tweak this to look good, but I also believe that I don't have the skills for it right now, so I decided to stick to pixel art. I made some mock-ups for treasure maps and had the idea to use simple icons for the enemies instead of real moving people. So I drew some different pirate hats and put them in-game, which looked good enough for me. I decided to simplify the tower system a bit, because it was getting a little too complex for my liking. There are now different cannons with their own specific stats, for example a long cannon that shoots powerful shots with great range, or a carronade which shoots more often but with less damage and range. That way the player has a better overview about where the different advantages and disadvantages lie, doesn't have to worry about all of the little stat blocks. I broke the game down in simple turns so the player, and me the game designer, always knows what's happening right now. There are defend turns in which enemies spawn and walk to the nexus, expand turns in which additional enemy paths and tower bases are unlocked, vendor turns in which cannons and abilities can be bought, upgraded or sold, more on that later, and strengthen turns in which enemies level up and get better stats. These turns can be easily tweaked and arranged in the editor. Maybe I can even turn this into a feature where players can edit their own custom levels. For now I visualized this with a placeholder design at the top of the screen. Now it was time to add the events that can buff or debuff stats. I made a simple circular area that detects when enemies or towers overlap it. Once an enemy touches the area, its speed gets boosted, for example. And when it leaves the area, the speed stat returns to normal. I call this an aura. I made it so auras can randomly spawn somewhere along enemy paths. Which auras and how often they spawn can be easily specified in the inspector. After that I implemented the vendors, menus where you can buy new cannons or upgrade or even sell one. For that I needed an item display which shows the buyable cannon and especially its stats. But for now I only used a placeholder which just shows the cannon name and icon. When you have enough money and decide to buy this, you'll get it in your inventory. Pretty straightforward. For the upgrades I used my stats system and made different stat resources for each tower level. When you pick a cannon, the stats of the next level get added on top of its current stats. Selling is also straightforward. The cannon gets removed from your inventory and you get half of your money back. To counter the player getting overpowered too quickly, I decided that only one item can be picked per vendor visit. I also gave the tower bases a cost, so the player constantly has to manage their resources. Should they spend all their money on towers and upgrades, or save some coins in order to unlock tower bases so more ground can be covered. I used the same stats leveling system that I use for tower upgrades for the enemy leveling. Their current level is indicated by stars above their head. Okay, last tweaks before I can let some friends playtest the game. I designed 3 different levels with rising difficulty. For that I used my mockup and exported the different islands on it so I can arrange them freely in Godot. Then I set up the levels, decided which auras and enemies should appear, and so on. My friends played the game and liked it. Unfortunately, I forgot to reset the money when starting a new level, so they quickly got richer and richer and were eventually so overpowered that everything was a breeze. Still, it gave me enough confidence to keep working on the game. I also found the game very fun when playtesting myself, by the way. That's always a good sign, because usually when I design my games and test them every day, they become boring to me quickly. Next up, user interface design. Remove the placeholders and design fitting assets. I started with the turn display and thought about what I could use for it. I wanted to use objects for the UI that could potentially lay on top of the treasure chart. I decided for a compass with turn icons instead of the usual north, east, south and west letters. When a new turn begins, the icons rotate and the compass needle always points to the current turn. I also needed to show how much money the player has, so I used a coin, specifically a doubloon, for it. It also holds buttons for controlling the game's speed and the pause button for opening the options menu. Eventually I decided to keep things a bit simpler though. The compass and doubloon were a bit too big and detailed for the look I was going for. So I simplified the compass and put it in the top right corner. For the time menu I used a design that resembles a scale bar that you usually find on maps. And for the pause button and the coin amount, I designed a crumbles piece of paper. I reused the paper visuals again and again in the vendor UIs and item displays. They look like a scroll or a contract now. Also, they now show the cannon's stats, so the players can be informed before deciding to buy the tower or the upgrade. Okay, visuals are good enough, time for making sounds. At first I used simple bit-crushed sounds for everything, but after deciding for the name Pew Pew Pirates, the opportunity to use only sounds that could be made with the mouth was too good. So I gave it a try and made my best pew pew sounds for every tiny thing. It came out better than imagined. At first I thought I would just make this a hidden option, but after listening to the outcome, I want this to be the main way to play the game, so I'm keeping it. Time to show the game to the world. That means creating the Steam page for it. That also means designing a logo, making screenshots, capturing GIFs, writing the description, and much more. So I got to work and after many days finished the Steam page. Still, there are a few more things I needed to do before I could release the game's demo in time for the Tower Defense Fest. For example, a simple visual inventory, so towers wouldn't just lay around anywhere on the screen. I made another scroll asset which holds unused cannons. The player can just pick them up and slot them to a tower base. If grabbing a cannon and letting go while no tower base is nearby, the cannon is sent back to the inventory. Next I added abilities to the game. Basically they are just auras, but these auras can be placed by the player. Of course these auras don't debuff the cannons, but rather buff them, or debuff the enemies. Now the player has the option to stun enemies or increase tower speed, for example. These abilities have cooldowns, so the player can spam them. I tried to use almost the same behavior as the cannons, so I made another inventory just for the abilities. They can be dragged and dropped exactly like towers, except that they don't need tower bases because they can be put anywhere. A border around an ability item shows the current cooldown time, and when the ability is ready again, it squashes and stretches a bit. Last but not least, I created some simple options, tweaked some numbers to balance the game, and tested the new version. The demo was ready, so I uploaded it and waited for Steam to review it. They had no issues. That means everything is ready for you guys to play it. You can head over to Steam, search for Pew Pew Pirates, or click the link in the description and download the game. And don't forget to wishlist Pew Pew Pirates, otherwise this game will also flop. Thank you for watching, and have fun playing.